Is an economic slowdown and or layoffs headed our way? Well, if recent news has anything to say for it, we may be in for a little bit of a wild ride. Hey everybody, welcome back to A Life After Layoff, and today we're going to be diving into what's coming for layoffs and potentially the U.S. economy over the next several months. And if you're fortunate enough to have a job and you're worried about job security, or you're on the outside looking in and hoping to find a job in the near future, and you want to see where things are headed, stick around because we're going to break it down in this video. So first, on the layoff side of things. If you haven't been paying attention, layoffs have been surging. Obviously, we've got the DOGE department, which is slicing into the federal workforce, but it's also spilling over into the private sector as well. So furloughs in the federal government have totaled 216,000 for March, part of a broader total of 275,200 reductions overall in the labor force. And this is according to Challenger, Gray, and Christmas. This is a lot of people, guys. This is a lot of people being downsized and suddenly finding themselves on the open market in the job market. Now, this is obviously going to impact a lot of these federal positions, but think of all the ancillary positions that are associated with it. So all the support groups. And I think that there's some hidden layoffs in this as well, or hidden impacts. You know, the companies that are set up to support the government, you know, even the local hot dog vendor who was relying on a certain number of hot dogs being sold out in front of one of the Capitol buildings. Those are people who are also impacted by this that I don't think we necessarily consider. So we're going to continue to see more and more layoffs by the Department of Government Efficiency. I think that that's been well publicized. So if you're in the federal government, you have to be paying very close attention to what's happening in your department. Make sure that you're in a very mission critical role, or potentially start to rebrand yourself if you can. But it's not just the feds. The private sector is also feeling the heat too. In fact, in February of 2025, companies have announced a collective 172,000 layoffs, and that's up 245% from last fall. Obviously, tech, retail, and hospitality are getting hit hard with tariffs. They're a bit more susceptible than other industries. And lower consumer spending is also biting into that. And that makes sense because as things get more expensive, people are changing their spending habits. And as we all know, it's virtually impossible to even buy a house in today's market with the wages that we're being paid. So far in 2025, and this is already even a little bit out of date, this is dated back a few weeks ago, we are seeing major corporations laying off as a result of the economy, number one, but also artificial intelligence. And we've talked about that before. Some people think I was being a little bit ridiculous about it, but more and more companies are laying people off and replacing them with artificial intelligence tools. And so right now, let's see, this is international. Obviously, you got some companies in Germany that are laying off some people. You got Adidas. Allies cut 5% of their workforce, which is roughly 500 people. We've got Automatic has cut 16% of their staff. So that's 1,500 people across the world. That's a pretty big one. BlackRock, which is kind of interesting. They're scooping, it seems like, everything up. They're actually cutting 1% of their workforce and trying to lean out. So there's a couple hundred people there. Block has laid off nearly 100 people. That's actually Jack Dorsey's fintech company from, obviously he was Twitter's ex-CEO. Blue Origin, 10%. That's Jeff Bezos. I guess being a billionaire, it's the kind of the thing to be a rocket scientist as well. Seems they're all creating rocket companies, which is kind of weird and strange. But nonetheless, Blue Origin is laying off 10% of their workforce. That can impact 1,000 more people. Boeing, which has had a lot of issues, a lot of very visible issues with their programs, in particular, recently the space faux pas with the kind of snafu that happened with the astronauts, but they're cutting 400 roles from its moon rocket program. BP has announced a huge layoff of 7,700 people globally, including those contractors. Small layoff with Bridgewater. Chevron, surprisingly, 20% of its global headcount is being laid off. That one's actually surprising. That's a lot of people. That's 9,000. CNN is cutting 200 jobs. Not terribly surprising, given that legacy media has been getting pretty brutal, beat up pretty brutally. Estee Lauder cutting as many as 7,000 positions. I'm not sure why this one is happening, but it looks like right sizing and they're outsourced. So they're basically restructuring over the next 2 years. So it's going to be cutting a lot of positions. Grubhub has announced 500. HPE, 2,500 employees. That's Hewlett Packard. So that's a big one. John Hopkins will cut over 2,000 people after losing their USAID. This is one of the DOGE cuts. So they lost their funding, and that's going to represent 2,000 positions or more. Kohl's, which has been really struggling. I know, at least in our local area, the Kohl's is struggling. 10% of their workforce. This isn't like a shocker to me, but nonetheless, 200 people. Meta just seems to lay people off. Like Zuckerberg just seems to like to lay people off. Another 5% of their workforce. They just seem like they're always on the forefront of laying people off. So that's disappointing. If you work at Meta, collect your paycheck, sock your bonus away, because it doesn't seem like you got a long shelf life there. And I'm imagining that this is going to be, obviously we know about the low performers, but I would imagine this is probably going to be, some of this is going to be AI related as well. They laid off 21,000 workers since 2021. I mean, it's a kind of brutal. I mean, granted, they're a huge company, but that's a brutal amount of layoffs in the tech space. Micro Technologies also slashed 2,000 jobs. And Microsoft is also, this is kind of the key thing here now, these performance-based layoffs. They're bad news because they brand people in the tech space as low performers, even if you get caught up in something that was unfortunate. Now you've got this scarlet letter on you, and it's a really unfortunate stigma. I just made a video about that. Then Morgan Stanley, again, spilling over into other industries. We've got finance here, 2,000 layoffs here in March. I mean, that's a lot of people. It's 2 to 3% of their global workforce, and we're probably going to see even more, especially as the economy, it's not looking so great. I would expect to see more and more financial services companies getting hit. Porsche, 3,900 jobs over the next few years. I would imagine with tariffs, in the United States, this is going to be a tough market. If they're not building their cars in the United States, they're going to be probably getting hit there as well. Salesforce with more than 1,000 jobs. So again, this tech stuff. Sonos, 200. Southwest Airlines, first ever, they've made a lot of really unpopular policy changes with how they operate, and they really don't have their competitive advantage anymore. They just seem like a company that's lost their way. It's not entirely surprising that they're laying off. Corporate headquarters at Starbucks. I mean, granted, in an economy where everybody's struggling, spending $7, $8, $9 for a cup of coffee, this is probably not shocking that people are cutting that stuff out of their day-to-day. Stripe laying off 300 people. Washington Post cutting 4% of its non-newsroom. I think those are pretty well documented. Wayfair has some tech people. Workday, again, this is ATS. Workday, 8% of their workforce. So human resource. Some people may celebrate this, but what this means, artificial intelligence. You're going to have more and more AI coming into the workplace, potentially impacting people getting jobs. This AI, it's on the side of people losing their jobs because of AI, but it's also going to be helping companies hire people, quote unquote, more efficiently. So, double-edged sword here. If you have an artificial intelligence robot that's going through, on one hand, I guess it could look at your profile quicker and make some decisions, but it's very black and white. You either fit the profile or you don't, and it can make a lot of these decisions for you. So it's like, be careful what you wish for here. Now, unfortunately, not to add any more rain to our already bleak cloud, next year, some economists are forecasting that we could see up to 1.5 to 2 million private sector layoffs in addition to what we've already seen. Now, we add that to the federal cuts, and we're looking at between 1.7 and 2.2 million layoffs by April of next year. Guys, that's a lot of people looking for jobs. And if you're in a high-risk job type or a field or an industry, you need to start being ready. Now, let's zoom out and look at the bigger economic picture. The U.S. economy is unfortunately slowing down, and here's what that means for you. Growth, which is measured by GDP or gross domestic product, is expected to drop from 2.8% in 2024 to just 1.9% in 2025. And some forecasts are even showing a contraction in the first quarter of 2025, down 2.8%. That's a red flag. Unemployment is going to be going up too. Right now, it's at about 4.1%, but by next April, it could hit 4.8 to 5%. It's obviously because of all those layoffs that we just talked about, but inflation's another worry. Right now, it's sticking around 3%, which is still above the Fed's 2% target. And why is that? Well, obviously in the short term, tariffs are going to be impacting prices of steel and cars and other electronic items and things that we import. And that's obviously going to hit our wallet. And consumer spending, which keeps the economy humming. And think things that we manufacture, or at least were manufactured here in the United States, those are also weakening. It's down to 2% growth in 2025 from a year ago where it was 2.9%. Frankly, people are just spending less as job fears grow. And unless you've been living under a rock, you know that we have these tariffs that are going to impact a lot of businesses, especially as these companies haven't really had time to react to it. So if you had moved a plant out of the United States and were producing your vehicles or your parts somewhere else, suddenly you get this impact that you didn't plan on, and you can't even move your plant back quick enough. So this is going to impact, at least in the short term. Now, anecdotally, it's not going to be all terrible because this is for the United States. I'm putting on my US cap here. So for those of you who are sitting outside of the United States, it might look a little different. But for the United States, the local Nissan plant here in Tennessee had announced previously that they were going to be shutting down several of the shifts at one of the factories locally. And they were going to move that production down, I believe, down to Mexico. But because of the tariffs, they have now walked that back, and they're going to be reinstituting these shifts and saving these jobs. This could be a potentially good time to be in manufacturing because a lot of these manufacturing jobs stand to come back. And if you're somebody that's made a living on plant engineering, plant management, safety, maintenance, this could potentially be a good thing. And the United States has, over the last several decades, has moved a lot of their manufacturing overseas. So we are no longer a manufacturing base. We are a service provider, basically. And so what this is, the cumulative effect of this is going to be to try to get manufacturing to come back to the United States. However, it is going to be very painful in the immediate term. And I'm concerned about how these tariffs are going to impact the economy, how much money you and I have to spend on, buying new cars and things like that. It is going to be painful, and it is going to impact people, and there's going to be some layoffs, and this is going to be a difficult thing to go through. My hope is that at the end of this, there is indeed a light at the end of the tunnel where manufacturing can come back in earnest and the United States can get back to a manufacturing base. There's hopefully going to be a happy balance across the globe for this because it impacts a lot of people outside of the United States as well. So I'm not an economist. I don't have a strong grasp on everything related to the nuances of how tariffs work financially and kind of economically. But I just know from my perspective in layoffs that there's going to be some pain here, and we have to start preparing now. We didn't get a lot of time to prepare, but we have to start preparing now. So let's go in eyes wide open here. I'm not the only one who thinks this way. The CFOs at major corporations, there was a survey done, and they pretty unanimously across the board are pessimistic about a recession coming before the end of 2025. I've been holding out hope that this wouldn't be the case, but it does seem like corporate America is not very confident in a soft landing here. So 95% of CFOs said the policy is impacting their ability to make business decisions, and while many said that Trump is delivering on his promises, his administration's approach is a bit too chaotic, disruptive, and extreme for them to navigate business effectively. So there is some fallout potentially with corporate CFOs in particular who feel that this may not be a soft landing. So let's just take a quick look and hear what they have to say.
Uncertainty was a key theme this quarter. We asked CFOs what sector they see having the biggest growth over the next 6 months. The top answer, it was, I don't know, 40% of respondents saying that. Energy came in second with 20%. Tech and healthcare were tied for third place with 10%. Very interesting to note here. There were 0 CFOs that believed communication services, consumer discretionary, real estate, or utilities would be the best performing sector. That outlook on the sectors reflects the views that CFOs have of the broader economy. 75% say they are somewhat pessimistic about the economy. That pessimism is reflected in their recession concerns. 60% of CFOs say they expect a recession in the second half of 2025. 15% say a recession is coming in 2026. And if that recession comes, the majority of CFOs expect it to be mild to moderate. 40% saying mild, 90% saying moderate. The other 10%, they say they don't believe that we're actually going to experience a recession. The pessimism also extending to the markets. 90% of CFOs said they expect the Dow to fall below 40,000 before it hits the next milestone of 50,000. To put that in context, that would erase just about all the gains since August of last year.
So obviously the pessimism from the corporate world is founded in the fact that there's a lot of instability right now and there's a major shakeup. So we'll have to see how this goes. And obviously if the economy tanks, you can expect to see that more companies will be very aggressive with their cuts, and that's not great news for the job seeker. So where is it hurting the most? And what is the Fed doing about it? Well, in some areas, it's going to be worse than others. Obviously, Washington, D.C. is in for a bit of a rough ride where unemployment, especially related to DOGE, could hit as high as 6.5% by mid-2026. Again, all those federal layoffs and the economy associated with the government. If you're in DC or in a nearby area like Virginia or Maryland, you may see the ripple effects in retail, hospitality, and other areas. Nationally, though, some economists say we may be able to still avoid a full recession. Growth is slow, but it's still a positive 1.9%. However, with these tariffs, it still remains to be seen. And the natural question is, well, what's the Federal Reserve doing about this? Right now, they're being cautious. They've paused rate cuts at 4.25% because that inflationary number is still a bit higher than target. But they may cut rates to 3.5 to 3.75% by next April if unemployment keeps rising. Lower rates could help, but don't expect a quick fix. Those tariffs and those layoffs are going to be a big hurdle here. So what does this mean for you, especially if you're in somebody that's in a relatively high-risk industry? Well, first, job security is shakier than it's been in years, and we've had a very topsy-turvy labor market. Unfortunately, it doesn't stand to get any better. And with the 1.7 to 2.2 million layoffs on the horizon, you absolutely need a game plan. It's not enough to wait till the other shoe drops. There's going to be too many people in the labor market competing for those precious few jobs. So now is the time to get in front of it and start to develop a clear strategy. If it were me, I would be assessing my skills today for what the market needs tomorrow and start trying to fill those skill gaps. If you're somebody that's been fortunate enough to get through several rounds of layoffs without being touched, don't think that you're immune here. And while you're at it, you may want to consider building out your networks as well. Now, the foundational thing that I'll be doing here too is starting to build side income streams. Assessing the market's one thing. Creating a plan in order to navigate through to get a new job is another thing. But protecting yourself in the event of an income disruption is going to be a massive part of my strategy. But if you're able to, I would recommend that you try to set aside money now so that if things continue hitting the fan, that you won't have to dip in and cannibalize your 401k, which is likely a lot lower than it was a week ago. And then once you do that, it's really time to start looking at streams of income again that are outside of your normal paycheck. If you're struggling and you don't know what to do there, I have actually just launched an affiliate program that anybody can sign up for. So you can head over to my website and check it out. And basically what you can do is earn a commission by helping people land their next job opportunity. So if you're struggling, you don't have any ideas on what to do for a side income stream, check it out. I will leave a link in the video description below. Anyway, that's it for today's deep dive into layoffs and the economy. What do you think? Are you worried about the trends that we're seeing? Or do you see opportunities? Drop a comment and let me know. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more career insights. And again, head over to alifeafterlayoff.com if you find that you need a little bit more help preparing for a potential career shift or a disruption. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.